They say, murder and arson bring wealth, but good deeds like building bridges leave no trace. I don't believe that. What I believe in is the cycle of karma. What goes around comes around. At 3 p.m., as agreed, I arrived at the bottom of Wang Yihe's apartment building, where a newly opened cafe had quickly become popular. The sunlight was perfect that afternoon. Wang Yihe spotted me from a distance, flashed me a smile, and walked over. Just as she was about to speak, a loud bang pierced the air. Instinctively, we both ducked and hunched our shoulders. The sharp wail of a car alarm followed, drawing our eyes to a nearby black sedan, now severely deformed. Lying sprawled atop the crushed roof was a person. It was Zhou Hui, Wang Yihe's fiancé. His body was splayed in a grotesque X, his head thrown back, eyes staring directly at us. Blood streamed from his nose and mouth, reversing its flow to soak his face, staining the pair of unclosing eyes a deep crimson. Wang Yihe let out a shrill scream and collapsed into unconsciousness. My name is Su Minjun, and I'm 30 years old. I run a small cafe in Qinhe City. Wang Yihe is 25. With her beauty, vibrant personality, and knack for sharing travel guides, she has become a minor influencer. I stumbled across her videos many times on social media, so I decided to message her privately, asking if she could promote my cafe. At first, she refused. Coming from a wealthy family, Wang Yihe played at content creation for fun rather than money. She had no interest in turning her hobby into a profit. But after sending her a few vlogs showcasing my shop, she gradually grew interested. After a month of persistent efforts, she finally agreed to visit my cafe. My shop is called the Past of Qinhe, nestled deep within an old street. It's small, only about 60 square meters. I still remember the first time we met. That day, I was tidying the coffee bar when I heard the door chime. I looked up to see her walking in. It was early winter. She wore a dark, long coat, her tea-colored curly hair cascading casually over her shoulders. A cream-colored wool scarf wrapped snugly around her neck, partially hiding her delicate face, giving her a tall, effortlessly elegant appearance. In person, she was even more stunning than in her videos. Wang Yihe smiled at me and greeted, "Hi, Minjia." As she unwound her scarf, her eyes scanned the shop's decor with a gentle smile, clearly admiring its aesthetic. I returned her smile and asked, "What would you like to drink?" "A Cordido, please." "Thanks." "Sure, take a seat wherever you like. It'll just be a moment." It was 3 p.m., and the sunlight poured in through the large glass windows, bathing the cafe in a golden glow, as if dusted with a soft sheen of light. She chose a sunlit table by the window. 10 minutes later, I brought over 2 cups of coffee, placing the Cordido in front of her. She took a sip, paused to savor it, and then met my eyes. We both smiled. "Sorry, Minjia, I'm not much of a coffee expert," she admitted. I laughed and nodded. "That's okay." "The place is beautifully decorated," she said, glancing around again. "It's a shame the location is so tucked away. Not many people would stumble upon it while strolling." I sighed in agreement. Yeah, I was full of passion when I started this venture. Now, I see I don't have much of a business mind. Luckily, the shop space belongs to an older family member, so at least I don't have to pay rent. I paused briefly before continuing. At first, I thought about leveraging short video trends to promote the cafe. But then I realized that turning it into a trendy hotspot would go against my original vision. Wang Yihe nodded thoughtfully. I get that. We ended up chatting about everything that day, from our hobbies to random stories. Unexpectedly, we hit it off. After that, we often hung out together, either exploring the city or soaking up the sun in my cafe. Over time, we became close friends. One day, she mentioned wanting to introduce me to someone, her fiancé, Zhou Hui. One afternoon, Wang Yihe arrived hand-in-hand with Zhou Hui. Zhou Hui was about my age, tall, and dressed in a sharp business suit. He wore silver, rimless glasses, and his neatly combed hair gave him a polished appearance. Together, they looked like the perfect couple. From my previous conversations with Wang Yihe, I had learned a bit about him. Zhou Hui was a lawyer at Qinhe City's Xuxing law firm, well known locally. But when Zhou Hui saw me, his warm, affectionate smile froze. I smirked and mouthed to Wang Yihe, "Not bad." She blushed faintly, a rare sight. We had dinner together that night. Though we'd been introduced, Zhou Hui seemed oddly guarded around me. His gaze was probing, as if trying to see through me. The morning after our meal, I received a friend request on WeChat. The profile picture belonged to Zhou Hui. "Who are you?" was the first message he sent after I accepted. "Su Minjun," I replied. He didn't message again, but I knew what he was suspicious about. Zhou Hui was meticulous. He'd dig up the answers on his own. After that, Wang Yihe never brought Zhou Hui to my cafe again, but trouble found its way to my doorstep. Suddenly, my shop was inundated with inspections, business, fire safety, the works. Someone reported me for every conceivable violation. Thankfully, I had all my licenses in order, so they couldn't pin anything serious on me. 2 months later, Zhou Hui showed up at my cafe alone. I brought over a cup of coffee, but he didn't touch it. "How much will it take for you to leave Qinhe?" he asked bluntly. I took a sip of my coffee. Bitter. "Mr. Zhou, what are you talking about? Why would I leave?" I asked, frowning. The muscles in his jaw tightened. "What's your relationship with Tang Xian?" I chuckled. "Oh, you still remember Tang Xian? Impressive." Zhou Hui took a deep breath. "Tang Xian and I ended things on good terms. I owe her nothing." I nodded. "Sure." "I know you approached Wang Yihe because of me," he continued, his voice low. "But whatever happened between Tang Xian and me is our business. It has nothing to do with her." He paused. "What will it take for you to leave Qinhe? Name your price. Just leave." I let out a long sigh. "All I'm doing is running a small cafe here." He stared at me for a while before exhaling in defeat. "What do you want?" I smiled faintly and leaned closer. "Guess." The next day, photos of my meeting with Zhou Hui made their way to Wang Yihe's phone. Being a straightforward and unsophisticated girl, she confronted me with the pictures immediately. "Xiao Minjie, why did Zhou Hui meet you behind my back yesterday?" Wang Yihe frowned as she asked. I smiled and replied, "It's nothing. We just had a casual chat." "You two knew each other before," she said. "Not really," I replied lightly. "We met once at a friend's house." "Why didn't you tell me you'd met him before?" Wang Yihe seemed agitated. Feigning innocence, I explained, "When you brought Zhou Hui to the cafe that day, I thought he looked familiar, but since he didn't acknowledge me, I didn't bring it up." Wang Yihe was silent for a while. Then she hesitated and asked, "Xiao Minjie, you and Zhou Hui in the past?" I smiled, holding her hand gently. "Don't overthink it. I've only seen him once before. Yesterday, he probably remembered me and stopped by for a chat. Don't worry, I won't meet your fiancé alone again." Relieved, Wang Yihe let out a small sigh, and I smoothly changed the topic. That matter was considered settled. In truth, Zhou Hui and I had only met once before, at Tang Xian's home. 8 years ago, Zhou Hui and Tang Xian met under unusual circumstances. Tang Xian, then a high school senior, had taken a break from school due to health issues and needed a private tutor to catch up. At the time, Zhou Hui was a graduate student in his second year. A brilliant law student at Luoda University, he came from a modest background. His widowed mother worked hard to support his education. Through a connection between Zhou Hui's professor, Professor Zheng Ming, and Tang Xian's father, Zhou Hui was introduced as a tutor. Tang Xian was 18 at the tender age of first love, while Zhou Hui was handsome, steady, and ambitious. It didn't take long for them to develop feelings for each other, or so Zhou Hui claimed. In reality, Zhou Hui saw an opportunity in Tang Xian's family. Her father was the founder of Tangqing Law Firm, a significant player in Qinhe City. Tang Xian was the ideal stepping stone for Zhou Hui's career ambitions. Unfortunately, his so-called feelings couldn't withstand temptation. Right before the college entrance exams, Tang Xian discovered she was pregnant during a routine checkup. The news was a thunderclap to the Tang family. Furious, her parents demanded to know who was responsible. Instinctively, Tang Xian sought out Zhou Hui. But Zhou Hui had already vanished. In a matter of weeks, he had secured admission to a foreign university and left the country. To this day, Zhou Hui doesn't know that Tang Xian never revealed the father's identity to her parents. She bore all the consequences alone. Not long after, Zhou Hui came to see me again. This time, his eyes were dark and sunken, as though he hadn't slept in days. When he entered the cafe, I asked, "Why isn't Iha with you today?" "She doesn't know I'm here," Zhou Hui replied, visibly weary. I shook my head. "I promised Iha I wouldn't meet you alone. Don't put me in a difficult position." A flicker of anger crossed Zhou Hui's face, but he quickly composed himself. After a moment, he said, "I need your help." "For what?" I asked. "I want to see Tang Xian." I shook my head. "I can't help you with that." In a low voice, he pleaded, "I just want to apologize to her. What happened back then was my fault. I failed her." I chuckled softly. "Didn't you say you and Tang Xian parted amicably? When did it become your fault?" Zhou Hui took a deep breath and said, "You don't understand what happened between us. Please, just help me get a message to her or give me her contact information. I'll reach out myself." I shook my head again. "You're right, I don't understand, and frankly, I don't care to. But I won't help you with this." Seeing that he wanted to press further, I cut him off. "What's done is done. You're with Iha now. Why not focus on the future?" Zhou Hui stared at me, as if trying to decipher my words. At that moment, new customers entered the cafe. I got up to greet them, and Zhou Hui left shortly after. Once he was gone, I made a phone call. "Go ahead," I said. A week later, Wang Iha came to the cafe. She looked exhausted. "What's wrong?" I asked. She sighed deeply. "Zhou Hui and I, something's not right." "Oh, he's hiding something from me?" After a moment's thought, I asked, "Do you think he's having an affair?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "Xiao Minjia, what should I do?" "I don't think Zhou Hui is that type of person," I said, trying to console her. "Given his current situation, you're his best choice. With your wedding so close, he's too shrewd to stir up trouble now." She seemed to calm down a little, managing a bitter smile. "You're right, Xiao Minjia." I handed her a cup of coffee and said, "Don't put unnecessary pressure on yourself. Don't let suspicion destroy your relationship. Instead of guessing, why not talk to him directly?" After pondering for a moment, she stood up. "Thank you, Xiao Minjia. I'll go now." Lately, Zhou Hui had been plagued with misfortune. First, a case he was certain to win was overturned in court when the opposing lawyer produced crucial evidence, causing him not only to lose the case, but also to anger a powerful client. Then, details of his past escapades at bars and his flings began circulating online. At a time when his wedding was approaching, he couldn't afford such scandals jeopardizing his marriage to Wang Iha. He worked hard to track down the tabloid reporter who leaked the story and spent a considerable sum to silence them. But that was just the beginning. The reputation of Xuxing law firm, where he worked, came under scrutiny. Cases he had handled were being reviewed with a magnifying glass, and the connections he'd cultivated over the years suddenly turned cold. At this point, if Zhou Hui didn't realize someone was targeting him, then all his years in the field would have been in vain. After 2 weeks of frantic efforts to manage the chaos, Zhou Hui finally got things under control enough to seek me out again. This time, he arranged to meet me at a private club in Qinhe City. When I arrived at the reserved room, I saw that he wasn't alone. Sitting beside him was none other than Professor Zheng Ming, the man who had introduced Zhou Hui to the Tang family years ago. Zhou Hui invited me to sit and spoke with a tone of sincerity. "Miss Su, I deeply regret my actions in the past. I was young and foolish, and I hurt Tang Xian. It's my fault, and I acknowledge that. I want to apologize to her in person and compensate her for her losses." Hearing this, I raised an eyebrow and smiled. "Oh, after all this time, you still haven't found Tang Xian?" Zhou Hui shook his head, explaining that after weeks of searching, he only discovered that Tang Xian and her family had emigrated years ago. Tang's father had transferred ownership of his law firm to someone else, and the Tang family had disappeared from public view. "Why do you think I can contact Tang Xian? We only met once at her house back then. I'm not exactly close to the Tang family. You're wasting your time trying to get to her through me." Zhou Hui's face darkened with frustration. He clearly suspected me of being involved in his troubles, but lacked evidence to confront me directly. It was then that Professor Zheng, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Miss Su, let's not beat around the bush. Right now, someone is retaliating against Xiao Zhou. Apart from the Tang family, we can't think of anyone else with the means to pull off such a large-scale operation. The reason we invited you here today is to ask you to mediate as an intermediary. If this continues, both sides will end up losing." I turned to Zheng Ming. Professor Zheng, back then, Zhou Hui was a poor boy from a small town. After causing such a huge scandal, he somehow managed to leave unscathed and study abroad. I imagine you must have played a role in that. Zheng Ming sipped his tea calmly. "You're overthinking it. Zhou Hui went abroad because he was talented. I didn't want to engage further with these two, so I stood up to leave. Before I could step out, Zheng Ming said something that made me pause. Miss Su, you're young and have a bright future ahead of you. Why risk everything for someone unrelated to you? Whatever the Tang family can offer, I can offer more. Think about it carefully." From that day on, I noticed unfamiliar faces appearing around me, likely hired by Zhou Hui to monitor me. Clearly, he was still trying to connect me to the Tang family. Without any concrete leads, he didn't dare act rashly. I went about my days running my shop, shopping, and even organizing a springtime road trip to Xinjiang with a few friends. Among those friends was Wang Yihe. Zhou Hui wanted to join us, but his troubles kept him tied down in Xinhe. We spent a month in Xinjiang and didn't return until early June. During that time, a major incident occurred in Xinhe. Zheng Ming, founder of Xuxing law firm, was accused of multiple crimes, including bribery of officials, embezzlement, and fabricating evidence. Though the investigation was ongoing, Zheng Ming had been summoned several times, and Xuxing law firm's reputation was in tatters. Upon her return, Wang Yihe was immediately summoned home by her parents, who urged her to reconsider her engagement to Zhou Hui. If Zheng Ming ends up in jail, they reasoned, it'll be difficult for Zhou Hui to escape unscathed. He's been at Xuxing for years as Zheng's protege. It's unlikely he's entirely clean. However, Zhou Hui had a way with women. Despite the pressure from her parents, Wang Yihe frequently came to my shop to avoid them. She didn't want to break up with Zhou Hui and firmly believed in his innocence. Zhou Hui clung to Wang Yihe like a lifeline, staying by her side constantly and playing the role of a devoted boyfriend to perfection. Meanwhile, the investigation into Zheng Ming took an unexpected turn. Due to insufficient evidence, the accusations against him didn't stick. However, the embezzlement charges led back to Zhou Hui instead. The law firm wasn't solely owned by Zheng Ming, and someone had to take the fall for the financial discrepancies. Zhou Hui found himself in a dire position, realizing that Zheng Ming's previous favoritism might have been setting him up as a scapegoat all along. The day after Zhou Hui was implicated, his mother, Zhou Xiaomei, arrived in Xinhe. What surprised me was that Zhou Xiaomei knew about me. Zhou Xiaomei, almost 60 years old, looked remarkably well-preserved, her elegance suggesting she had been quite beautiful in her youth. "You must be Miss Su," she said, sitting down. I nodded and poured her a glass of warm water. She sipped thoughtfully before speaking. "I've heard you're close to the Tang family. Was it you who orchestrated what happened to Zheng Ming and Zhou Hui?" I smiled faintly. "You give me too much credit. Zheng Ming is a big figure in Xinhe. I don't have that kind of influence." Zhou Xiaomei replied calmly, "You may not, but the Tang family does. I know about what happened between Zhou Hui and Tang Xian. I have something that might interest you, a bargaining chip. In exchange, I need a promise from you. What kind of promise? I asked. I want you to ensure Zhou Hui walks away from this unscathed. In return, I'll help you bring down Zheng Ming. After a moment's thought, I nodded. All right, I agree. But either Zheng Ming or Zhou Hui has to fall. If what you have can't take down Zheng Ming, then Zhou Hui will be the one to pay the price. She handed me a USB drive. This contains records of Zheng Ming's embezzlement and bribery. I raised an eyebrow. How did you get this? Zhou Xiaomei gave me a knowing look. You already know the answer. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here in Qinhe. I know all about what happened to the Tang family. Zhou Hui was just a pawn in a bigger game. This is his lifeline. With that, Zhou Xiaomei left. Before she departed Qinhe, she visited Zhou Hui, likely giving him reassurance. He seemed more relaxed after that, choosing to stay focused on his relationship with Wang Yihe instead of worrying about the law firm's troubles. That particular trait of Zhou Hui's seemed to run in the family. On the third day, the evidence Zhou Xiaomei gave me appeared in the investigation team's email. This time, the financial records were clear and detailed, and the situation took an instant turn. Zheng Ming was arrested without the possibility of bail.
He was done for.
Zhou Hui left Xuxing law firm. However, he had already made a name for himself in the industry, and with the Wang family's support, his reputation began to soar. From Zhou Hui's perspective, things seemed to be moving in a good direction. That autumn, Zheng Ming's verdict came down. He took full responsibility for all charges and was sentenced to life imprisonment. Zhou Hui's wedding with Wang Yihe was approaching while I was preparing to leave Qinhe. My mission was nearly complete. That day, I invited Zhou Hui to my shop. I brought out a tea set, brewed some tea, and placed a cup in front of him. No coffee today, try this instead. He looked at the tea, but didn't touch it, staring at me warily. Actually, I have no connection to the Tang family. My coming to Qinhe this time wasn't for Tang Xian, I said. Zhou Hui frowned. What do you mean? After the incident, and when you were sent abroad by Zheng Ming, many things happened to the Tang family, I said after a moment of silence. Back then, the Tang family's decision to transfer the law firm wasn't just because of Tang Xian's pregnancy. What truly broke Tang's father's spirit was Zheng Ming's betrayal. Tang Xian's pregnancy had been deliberate, a trap from the start. At the time, Tang Qin law firm, led by Tang's father, was the most prominent in Qinhe. He had invited Zheng Ming to join multiple times, but Zheng Ming always declined with various excuses. Zheng Ming wanted to establish his own law firm, but Tang Qin was too well established, and Qinhe's legal market was only so big. It was difficult for him to compete for Tang Cheng's clientele. So, he came up with a strategy to destroy them from the foundation. They say the most painful wounds are inflicted by those closest to you, a sentiment Zheng Ming exemplified perfectly. He knew Tang Xian was Tang's father's dearest treasure. A direct attack on the law firm would only incite Tang's father's fighting spirit. However, Tang Xian was his fatal weakness. Having practically watched Tang Xian grow up, Zheng Ming knew her too well. Tang Xian had taken a leave of absence from school due to depression. She was fragile and couldn't withstand a heavy blow. So Zheng Ming deliberately introduced Zhou Hui to the Tang family as a tutor, instructing Zhou Hui to seduce Tang Xian, make her pregnant, and then leave immediately for abroad. Sure enough, Tang Xian fell apart after the betrayal by someone she loved. Tang's father, a seasoned lawyer, quickly saw through the scheme. He sought out Zheng Ming for an explanation, but Zheng Ming evaded him. Tang Xian's depression relapsed, and she attempted suicide several times. Betrayed by a close friend and tormented by his daughter's despair, Tang's father became exhausted. He rapidly transferred the law firm and emigrated with his family. Zhou Hui listened in silence, just about to respond when I raised my hand to stop him. That's only half the story. There's another half you don't know. After Tang's father moved his family abroad, Tang Xian stopped seeking death. It was as if she had found peace, but she insisted on keeping the child. Tang's father had no choice but to agree. She was still young, weak, and had attempted suicide several times. Her pregnancy was difficult. In her 8th month, she gave birth prematurely. I looked up at Zhou Hui. Tang Xian died during childbirth. Zhou Hui rubbed his face with his hands. What about the child? Is it abroad?
No.
The baby was born premature, stayed in intensive care for 2 months, but couldn't be saved. Tang Xian's mother passed away from a sudden heart attack caused by their deaths. Half a year later, Tang's father died in a car accident. Zhou Hui's eyes widened in shock. I stared at him and said word by word, "The Tang family is gone. Completely." Zhou Hui's hands, holding the teacup, trembled uncontrollably. He began to panic. Are you here to avenge the Tang family? Back then, I was forced. Zheng Ming had control over my future. I didn't mean to hurt them. I gently shook my head. I've said before, I have no connection to the Tang family. Our relationship was just an acquaintance, barely even friends. Then why did you? He wanted to ask why I was helping the Tang family seek revenge. I interrupted him. I've always said I had no connection to the Tang family. I didn't lie to you. You're the one who assumed I was avenging Tang Xi. Zhou Hui frowned, scrutinizing me again before asking the same question he had started with. Who are you? Who am I? This question filled Zhou Hui with fear. From the very beginning, he and Zheng Ming had been wrong. I hadn't come into their lives because of Tang Xian, so who was I really here for? I took out a photo and handed it to him. It was a family portrait. A man, Zheng Ming, a woman, his wife, Sun Lei, and a baby girl, no more than a year old, cradled in Sun Lei's arms. The girl was Zheng Ming's only daughter, Zheng Xiaoxiao. Below the photo were the words, taken in 1990. Zhou Hui took the photo, glanced at it, and asked, "What does this mean?" I handed him another photo. Zhou Hui looked at it, and his expression shifted dramatically. That's impossible. This can't be true. It was another family portrait. The man was Zheng Ming, but this time, the woman was Zhou Xiaomei. Zhou Xiaomei held a boy about a year old, Zhou Hui. Beneath the photo were the words, taken in 1993. I pointed to the two photos and said, both of these photos are real. The story began over 30 years ago. Back then, Zheng Ming was a poor college student on the verge of graduation, a golden phoenix from a remote mountain village. According to the policies at the time, university graduates were assigned jobs in their hometowns. But Zheng Ming had experienced the glamour of big city life. How could he willingly return to his impoverished hometown? In his law school class was a girl named Sun Lei, the youngest daughter of the law school dean. She was beautiful, from a prominent family, and had many suitors. Yet, none had managed to win her over. Eventually, Zheng Ming started pursuing her. Despite his good grades and decent appearance, people laughed at him, calling him delusional. How could someone like Sun Lei ever accept a poor nobody? But, to everyone's surprise, Sun Lei did say yes. With the Sun family's connections, Zheng Ming continued his studies and eventually secured a teaching position at the university. That one choice completely changed his life. In 1989, Sun Lei gave birth to a daughter. That same year, Zheng Ming was assigned to a project in Pingxiang City for 2 years. It was there that he met Zhou Xiaomei. At the time, Zhou Xiaomei was a server at H University's guest house in Pingxiang. She was exceptionally beautiful when she was young, and over time, the two fell in love. Zhou Xiaomei was the opposite of Sun Lei. She came from poverty, had a gentle personality, and lacked Sun Lei's temperamental airs. She was exactly the type of woman Zheng Ming adored. In 1991, near the end of the project, Zhou Xiaomei discovered she was pregnant. Zheng Ming bought a small house in Pingxiang and settled her there. At the end of 1991, Zhou Xiaomei gave birth to a son, Zhou Hui. Zheng Ming was a pragmatic man. He knew his future depended on Sun Lei and her family support, so he couldn't let Sun Lei find out about Zhou Xiaomei. He kept the secret well for years. Only after Sun Lei's father passed away, when Zheng Ming's career was secure, did he dare secretly bring Zhou Hui into his life. That's how Zhou Hui ended up at Luoda University, becoming Zheng Ming's student and helping him take down the Tang family. I'm really Zheng Ming's son? Zhou Hui's voice trembled. I nodded. But he wanted me to take the fall for him. I chuckled and shook my head. You and your mother share the same flaw, impatience. You're Zheng Ming's only son. He values carrying on the family line more than anything. Originally, he planned to have Sun Lei take the blame. But your impatience ruined everything, and you dragged him down with you. Zhou Hui looked at me in disbelief.
No,
that's impossible. Why should I believe you? I took a sip of tea and nodded. You don't have to believe me. Why don't you ask your mother? Zhou Hui's hands trembled violently. He was finally beginning to realize what he had lost. No, this isn't right. Zhou Hui shook his head. How do you know all of this? Who are you working for? Don't tell me you're still too blind to figure it out, I said, raising an eyebrow. Zhou Hui's face fell into despair. With Professor Zheng gone and me out of Xuxing, the biggest beneficiary is Sun Lei. You're working for Sun Lei. I smiled but said nothing. The situation surrounding Chenhe is coming to a close, and it's time for me to leave. Before I go, I arranged to meet with Wang Yihe, who seems to be the only one truly hurt by everything that's happened recently. Wang Yihe asked, Xiaominjie, are you really leaving? I nodded and handed her a cup of cappuccino. She sighed wistfully. Then we won't be able to hang out often anymore. I smiled and reassured her. It's okay. We'll see each other again someday. We chatted idly for a while before I asked her, how's the wedding prep going with Zhou Hui? Wang Yihe was silent for a moment before she said, my parents are strongly against it. I don't even know what to do anymore. I said, Xiaohe, I'm about to leave, but I know some things about Zhou Hui. He's not right for you. Wang Yihe looked up at me. I don't know. I love him, but I'm also really scared. I thought for a moment before responding. Marriage is a big deal. You must be cautious. You're still so young. There's no need to rush. If you're not sure, it's okay to postpone the wedding. Wang Yihe nodded. On the day of my departure, she invited me to dinner to see me off. At 3 p.m., as planned, I arrived at her apartment complex. There was a new cafe nearby that looked nice. The sunlight was perfect that day. From afar, Wang Yihe saw me and smiled, walking over. She was just about to speak when,
bang!
A loud crash startled us, and we instinctively ducked. A car alarm blared as we turned to see a black car, now crumpled, with a person sprawled across its roof. It was Zhou Hui, Wang Yihe's fiancé. He lay there, arms and legs splayed in a T shape. His head was tilted back, blood streaming from his mouth and nose, pooling in his eyes. Wang Yihe screamed and fainted. I helped her to the side, then called the police and an ambulance. When the police arrived, I told Officer Song that Wang Yihe's apartment was on the 8th floor and that Zhou Hui had likely fallen from there. After giving my statement, I left, bought a plane ticket, and departed Chenhe City. About 6 months later, I learned the full story behind Zhou Hui's fall from Wang Yihe. Shortly after Zheng Ming went to prison, he died. He left a will, naming Zhou Hui as the primary heir to most of his assets and requesting Zhou Hui formally recognize his lineage. Zhou Hui, unaware of the will, hadn't expected how far people would go over such an inheritance. That day, Sun Lei and Zheng Xiaoxiao somehow found out Zhou Hui was staying at Wang Yihe's apartment. They forced their way in with Zhou Hui's mother, Zhou Xiaomei, held hostage. Zheng Xiaoxiao, spoiled from birth, harbored deep resentment toward Zhou Xiaomei and Zhou Hui for her father's betrayal and their role in sending him to prison. In a fit of rage, she insulted and beat Zhou Xiaomei in front of Zhou Hui, calling her a shameless homewrecker and him an illegitimate child. She demanded Zhou Hui sign a document renouncing his inheritance. Zhou Hui refused to relinquish such a significant fortune. In the ensuing chaos, Zheng Xiaoxiao grabbed a fruit knife from the coffee table and stabbed Zhou Xiaomei. Seeing his mother injured, Zhou Hui panicked and tried to call for an ambulance and the police. Zheng Xiaoxiao froze in shock. Sun Lei, however, stayed composed. She instructed Zheng Xiaoxiao to press on the wound, claiming she could call an ambulance from a nearby private hospital where she had connections. While Zhou Hui let his guard down, Sun Lei lured him to the balcony and pushed him off. Afterward, Sun Lei pulled the knife from Zhou Xiaomei's abdomen, wiped off any fingerprints, and stabbed her in the heart. Her plan was meticulous. She would take the blame for Zheng Xiaoxiao, confessing to both murders. Sun Lei's imprisonment would ensure Zheng Xiaoxiao's freedom, allowing her daughter to inherit Zheng Ming's wealth and start anew abroad. A parent's love can be far-reaching. Unfortunately for her, Sun Lei hadn't accounted for the surveillance cameras in Wang Yihe's apartment, which captured everything in detail. At that moment, I was on a video call with Wang Yihe. Xiaomijie, those cameras were installed just a week before Zhou Hui's death. Remember when we went to the pet market and you suggested I get a cat? You told me I'd need cameras to monitor the pet. She took a deep breath and asked, "So, what was your role in all this?" I thought for a moment before replying. "No matter my role, Xiaohe, you should know I've never harmed you." Wang Yihe nodded. "That's true. You warned me about Zhou Hui many times. I must have been blind back then. After Zhou Hui's death, my parents told me so many things about him. I never realized how dangerous he was." I comforted her. "Xiaohe, let the past be the past." She smiled. "Yes. Good night, Xiaomijie." After hanging up, I opened my photo album. There was a picture of two girls, 18-year-old Tang Xian and 23-year-old me. Who am I? This is a terribly cliché story. My parents died in a factory accident when I was 10. The greedy factory owner tried to settle with just 2,000 yuan. Fortunately, a cousin working in the city directed me to seek legal aid. Tang's father was the lawyer who helped me win the case. The compensation I received was enough to sustain me until adulthood. From then on, Tang's father kept an eye on me, inviting me to stay with their family every summer and winter. Tang Xian and I became as close as sisters. I was supposed to tutor Tang Xian that year, but a rare overseas exchange opportunity came up. Tang's father and Tang Xian insisted I not pass it up. Before leaving, I met Zhou Hui once at their house. By the time I returned a year later, Tang Xian had suffered a devastating tragedy. Over the past 6 years, I uncovered the relationship between Zheng Ming and Zhou Hui, using it to get close to Sun Lei. She could never accept Zheng Ming's betrayal, and Zhou Hui, the illegitimate child, was a thorn in her side. So, I returned to Qinhe and helped her bring down Zheng Ming step by step. Zheng Ming's will was the straw that broke the camel's back, a straw heavy enough to drive Sun Lei mad. And she didn't disappoint me. I tapped Tang Xian's face in the photo. "Tang Xian, I made sure Zhou Hui personally paid his debt to you.